Hello everyone and welcome to the Upden Indiana Nonprofit Advertising Trends and Grants webinar. I want to welcome you on behalf of Upden and myself, Don Rulo. Share more about Upden and myself in a moment, but let me tell you a little bit about our agenda for today. Over about the next 20-25 minutes, I'm going to be sharing about the Indiana statewide survey results that many of you took part in, and some of you weren't able to join in the live webinar, so here's the recorded version for you today. And so we're glad that you've joined us. We're also going to be sharing some insights on reaching new supporters, because that, as we know, is the lifeblood of every nonprofit, whether those supporters are financial supporters or they're volunteer supporters. We're also going to be talking about some very exciting grant opportunities that I'm sure you're going to be happy to hear about in the last half of our webinar. So please make sure you catch on to those, and we'll have more information for those at the end as well. Again, I want to share a little bit about Upden with you. Upden is an international marketing firm. We help nonprofits with their marketing and their advertising. We've been in business since 2006. We are a certified Google partner, and we have Google certified AdWords specialists and ad developers. And I'll show you how Google fits in towards the end of the webinar, but I just want to let you know up front that we do have a connection with Google, and we'll show you how that works here in a little bit. A little bit about myself. I have over 20 years of nonprofit experience working in and with nonprofits. I've worked in marketing, strategic planning, and I'm the member of 2 board of directors currently as we speak. So I know the ups and downs of nonprofits, and I can understand where most of the nonprofits that are joining us today are at. So let's go ahead and get started here, and we'll share a little bit about why we did the survey. First of all, to learn and to share which marketing activities and methods are most successful. There's about 14 different common activities that nonprofits use in their groups and their organizations. Now, they don't use all of them, and those listening today, you're not going to use all 14 of these different activities, but these are just the common 14 that we asked about in the survey. There's also 5 common marketing methods, most of which, maybe not all, but most of which every nonprofit has used to some degree. The other reason is to help nonprofits reach those new supporters, because we know that, again, that is the lifeblood, and we want to see you succeed. To inspire nonprofits and to increase the reach of their message and mission. We want you to succeed. That's the whole point of what we're talking about, sharing the results from the webinar and sharing about the grants here in a little bit. About the survey results, things that we gathered from around the state of Indiana, it was from a diverse group of nonprofits. It wasn't just one type of nonprofit or one sector. It was a very wide group and diverse of nonprofits. And all those nonprofits had various missions and goals. I'll share those a little bit later as well. And then also the webinar results that we're sharing today are recorded for anybody to listen to and share with other people, as a matter of fact. So let's go ahead and jump right in with the survey results themselves. I'm going to start out talking about the actual survey results, and I want to clarify some things that as we go forward. We're going to start out talking about direct mail, website, email, phone, online advertising, things along those lines. And as I share the results, don't get so hung up on the actual percentages that you see on the graph, for instance, here. It's more of the pattern that we start to see of what's working and what's not, because that's actually what we're doing. When we talk about what's the most successful activities or what's the least successful, we boil that down to simple English, simply says what's working and what's not. Okay? And then we're also going to see something else here in just a moment. When we show the next part of the slide here, about the least successful, you're going to see some similarities. You might see, for instance, on these slides, donations might be number 1 on the most successful, but you might also see donations in the top 3 as the least successful. And there are 2 reasons as to why you can see the same activity as a most successful and a least successful. And here's the 2 reasons as to why. 1, and this is very important, because most nonprofits are focusing on the top 4 or 5 activities, like donations, awareness, things along those lines. So as they focus on those, that's where they're going to have their success or their not so good success, let's say. The other reason, and this is very important, and I really want you to catch this, is we had by far a huge number of more positive response. In other words, what was more successful, things that were working, there was a huge number of good answers there. People said it worked compared to those who said it didn't. And I'll show you that here in just a moment. So let's start here, and I'll explain that as we go. For instance, direct mail. The top most successful activities, what was working? was in the area of donations, newsletters, and awareness, sending out letters to do that. Event attendance was a close fourth. And so those are the top four, if you will, of success in direct mail. Now here's the least successful when it comes to direct mail, getting a good response. Newsletters, donation, and event attendance. Now you can see again here, donations, this is what I was talking about. Donations was number one on doing a great job and working in direct mail, but it would happen to be number two in what wasn't working. Again, the two reasons as we move forward are simply because this is what most nonprofits focus on, donations and awareness and event attendance, for example. But the other reason is because we had a huge number, and I'm just going to make up a number so you can understand and draw the picture here for you. We might have had 100 people say that donations was a great success, so it put it at the top of the list as successful activities. But because there weren't as near as many responses to the least successful, there might have only been 4 or 5 people who said donations weren't a success by direct mail for them, but they still ended up in the top 3 in the least successful. But they were far outweighed by the more positive. 100 people would say they're positive, and only 5 people would say it was a negative or least successful activity for them. So that's what I want you to understand as we go forward. You can see it in both, and that's why. So direct mail, good success with donations, newsletters, and awareness. Let's move on to the next one, and that would be phone. The phone method of contacting with people. Again, we see similar things here. Donations, awareness, event attendance, and volunteers is a close fourth. Starting to see a pattern already because these are the things that most nonprofits focus on. Nothing that we wouldn't expect to see here because these are the areas that we expect to see nonprofits working towards and striving towards to achieve their goals. The things that didn't work so well using the phone were event attendance, newsletters, and volunteers. Again, a little crossover as we said, and I gave you the reasons as to why. But the one that kind of stood out here is newsletters because it was new. We noticed that people using the phone to call people and say, hey, would you like to get our newsletter? That didn't work very well for people. Okay? Let's move on to the next one. Email. As you see, we're kind of progressing into a little more high tech, if you will. We went from the snail mail, if you will, to the phone, now to email, and we'll be talking about websites. So we're going to delve into some tech things today because that's the future of where things are. Even with nonprofits, whether it's a nonprofit or a business, tech, and as much as maybe some of us who are a little bit older, and I include myself in that, may like to have some of those traditional things, but tech is where everything is going. In email, the top 3 that we saw that had the most success were getting people to attend an event, bringing awareness to the organization, and donations through email. So those were your top 3. The least successful were social media, donations, and volunteers. Social media kind of stands out here as well too because of being on the top of that list. Sending out an email and trying to get people to maybe connect with your organization, let's say via Twitter or Facebook or whatever else social media you might use, it wasn't as successful as other methods. Again, a little more high-tech even yet. Website. The top 3 most successful activities that the nonprofits in Indiana shared with us said as they used their website, the best thing and the best responses they had were awareness, donations, and event attendance. And social media was a close fourth. Those certainly don't shock us by any stretch of the imagination. And you can start to see this pattern forming, and that's what's really important. There is a pattern of what is working. Remember we said before what's working and what's not, what's successful and what's not so successful. And we can see the same things over and over again that are a success. The least successful for a website were donations, memberships, and awareness. And again, just to remind you one more time, the reason you see donations and say awareness in both the most and least successful is simply because that's what people are focusing on. That's what your organizations are trying to do. But there is a far greater number of having success. Like I said in the beginning, maybe 100 people responded, yes, this is a great success for our donations. And this is just a percentage, that 15%. But the 27% was just of those that responded. There might have only been 10 that responded that it wasn't a great success for them. And so 3 out of those 10 said it wasn't a great success. That's why. So it still was overall of great success when you look at everything here in combination. And here's what I'm talking about when I say a great success. And here's the pattern that we saw. by the answers to the questions that you gave, the ones that you wrote in basically by hand or typed in, and the ones that you just clicked a checkbox for. We took all those into consideration and blended those together and all those answers, and here's what we see. The top 5 most successful activities across all marketing methods are donations, awareness, event attendees, volunteers, and newsletters. That's what was the most successful across all the 5 marketing methods. And the reason is because that's what most nonprofits are focusing on. Now, we also go over to what didn't work as well. The least successful were memberships. That would be places like maybe a YMCA or something who do have membership drives, or some other organizations do have memberships as well. Online store sales, that's simply selling things online. Space rentals, some organizations we work with actually have space to rent out for events. Auctions and testimonials, those were the least successful when we blended all of the criteria and all the answers together. And those are critical to know simply because you can see what most nonprofits are striving for. Now, let's share some insights to reaching those new supporters. And again, when we talk about new supporters, we're talking about those who give financially, those who give of their time. I say it in this phrase, those who give their time, talent, and treasure. Those are the supporters that we're talking about. So let's take a look at those. We know one of the other questions that we talked about and brought up was online advertising. And here's the insights we want to share. We asked the question, is your nonprofit using online advertising? And we got a muted response to that. But here's why we know this as far as talking to different clients and different people that we work with. Most people who are not using online advertising are not using it because they have a lack of staff. And can anybody say that's us? You know, we're on a shoestring staffing budget, if you will. We need more staff. So it's a lack of staff. Also, it's a lack of maybe technical knowledge among the staff of how to utilize online marketing, online advertising to gain the traction and the visibility that we'd like to do. Maybe it's a budget thing where the budget is tight or nobody's ever thought to spend money in that way on the budget. Or fear of the unknown, simply because most people maybe don't know about the online advertising, how it works. So it says, well, since I don't know how it works, I won't do it. Most people know how to pick up a phone or send out an email or send out a letter, but the online thing might be one of those things, well, I don't know how it works very well, so let's not deal with it. But here's the key thing to know about online advertising and marketing. We factually know that 75% of potential supporters go online to determine where they give their time and money. That's a staggering statistic. 3/4 of the people who give their time and their money are online searching where to give their time, talent, and treasure. So the question I ask is, are we meeting them there? Because that's where they're at. That's where they find out about us. Now, the most successful activities have one common thread that puts them together. All of those things, they're supporters connected online through a website. It's like a funnel. They somehow got to the website in some way, shape, or form. They connected electronically, digitally, however you want to talk about it, virtually. They connected in the high-tech area. Now, supporters are generally directed to a website. And what I mean by that is this. Most people, in many cases, are told what website to go to. It's through a friend or maybe even a publication. It might be in an ad. It might be in a flyer that somebody saw hanging in a grocery store. And they see a website, so they are directed there. Very few people stumble onto a website. When they're going online and they start to do searching and looking, they don't just happen to just stumble on your organization unless they're specifically looking for it. And we definitely want to talk about how we can take and make that a better situation for you. Because here's the problem. Most websites are a billboard in the desert. That's exactly what they are. You can have a fantastic website. It can be a great one, and I've seen many that are fantastic, but nobody knows they're there because they're like a billboard in the desert. So that's the problem, is we can have this fantastic website, pour thousands and thousands of dollars, $10,000 and $15,000 into a website, but it's not being seen. So what good does it do? Well, that's the problem, but here's the solution. The solution is websites need to be a billboard in Times Square. That's what needs to happen. We need to bring it from the desert to Times Square so as many people can have access to us and our website as possible. Just creating more visibility. You see, it's critical to have people come to your website so they can connect engage, and build relationship with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in a little bit, about building relationship and connecting, how important that really is. I'll share some statistics in just a couple of minutes. But it's important to move your website and your presence, your online presence, from the desert to Times Square. Let me share very quickly about a couple small nonprofits. This is a great example to show you, kind of like a case study. These two small nonprofits, the Dixie Sternwheeler and the North Webster Community Center, not very big at all, doing completely different things, but they had very similar numbers. In other words, they were so close in numbers, we combined them to give you an average. Before we worked with them and helped them out, they were receiving less than 250 website visitors per week. Okay, so some people might say, that's great, that's fantastic. Okay, but now, after doing some work with them and guiding them with that, working with them, they're now receiving between 1,100 and 2,100 website visitors per week. They've increased by 400 to 800% the people who are coming to visit their site, where they now get a chance to tell them about their activities, share their testimonials and their story and why they're relevant and why they're important. That's the biggest thing to show you here. See, they weren't promoting their mission through the most commonly used search tool, and I'm going to mention Google here because we're going to come back to them, but Google is the most commonly used search tool. They weren't using that to its full effect, where up to 150,000 people were seeing them, at least being visible to them, so they had the opportunity to go connect with them on their website. Now, I know we just got through the holidays here. We're in the beginning of January, and so I asked the question, anyone want some pie? Okay, one of my favorite pies is pumpkin pie, and you can see that person standing off there to the side holding that small pumpkin pie. Well, that pie represents the supporters and the income that we have into our nonprofits, whether they're volunteers or the donations that come in financially. That represents the pie that we have to work with. And there's only so much pie to go around, right? Well, let's see about that. More than ever, and I know this personally, again, I want to remind you, I've got over 20 years of nonprofit experience, and I am still intricately involved with nonprofits today as we speak. So more than ever, nonprofits are asked to do more and serve more, while that pie seems to start looking like that person when they're holding it. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So they're asked to do more with less, basically. So I ask, is the answer to do less and serve less simply because the pie might be getting smaller? I don't think so. I'd say absolutely not. I think there's another way to be able to help nonprofits out, reach their goal, reach their mission, spread the awareness that they're looking for. The answer really is to have a bigger pie. Wouldn't we all like to get our forks and spoons and jump into that pumpkin pie right there? That's amazing. But the answer is to simply grow the pie. And that's what we are talking about when we talk about online marketing. We're talking about all the other marketing tools that we were talking about, the phone, the email, the website, all of those. It's to increase the size of the pie. And that's what we need to do. We need to get that new blood, those new supporters, connect with new people so we can share the story. The pie is the key, is growing that pie. Now, some of you may, when you've taken the survey, you may remember the Imagine question from the survey. The Imagine question was, what would we possibly do if we got $3 million? As I read through the survey responses, it was amazing to me and inspiring to me to see the answer to some of these questions. There were people who wanted to build a women's home in India, not Indiana. I know we're in Indiana, and we've got the survey results here for Indiana, but their response was they wanted to build a women's home in India for ladies there. There were people who wanted to build a building so they could better serve their clients. There are people who wanted to increase their programs to senior citizens who they want to feed them on a more regular basis. They want to give more care to them. All those are inspiring to me, and that's what it means to grow the pie. You always have to remember, what do you want to do with the imagination? What can you imagine doing with more? Having a bigger pie of supporters, volunteer-wise and financially speaking. Let me give you some online trends here in donations in the last 5 to 7 minutes that we have together. Let me give you some trends here, and we'll move into the grants just momentarily. On donations specifically, we're talking online donations through online giving. Online giving was up 14% in 2013. Almost 25% of those who gave in the first year were retained as ongoing givers. In other words, the retention of the first year, they didn't give just one time. They've been consistently giving in some way, shape, or form. 84% of the Gen Yers, those mid-20s to 40 kind of range, somewhere in there, they wanted to or they did donate via a website. See, they're high tech. They want to engage in this tech area online. That's where they're at. 40% of all the respondents donated between $1 and $50 in 2012, and another 23% gave between $51 and $100 in 2012. So they don't have to be very small gifts. It's more than $10 and $15. It's $50 to $100. And if you can look here, the average online gift in 2012 was $77. That was the average online gift. I know nobody would say no to a good sized handful of people saying I'll donate $77 if that's the average. Also want to point out too, down here at the bottom, if you read that note along with me, not all the online gifts were less than $100. Of this group that was surveyed on their particular survey, 5 of the organizations they asked, they reported gifts of over $100,000 in 2013. Online, not in the mail, not a check, online. They gave online that much. That's an amazing thing. Again, the trend is there. We can see it so much where things are going. Let's talk about some online trends in volunteers, because donations and volunteers, really, if we're being honest, those are the two things that most nonprofits are looking for and looking at and saying, this is what we need to increase. So let me share some statistics about volunteers here, statistics about that. 60% said they like it when nonprofits share success stories. I mentioned this earlier briefly. That is what people are looking for. When they come to your website, they want to, and your social media pages, they want to see what you're doing, and they want to hear that things are a success. And 56 confirmed storytelling is what motivated them to give and to volunteer. Again, they want to hear the story. 46% of those Gen Yers, that mid-20s to 40s, were inspired to act, to volunteer. And again, those are the people who are connected online every day, all day, it seems like. So the key is nonprofits have to tell their story online. The newsletter going out in the snail mail is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not putting that down. But you can see where the trend is. People want to know what's happening, whether it's a newsletter or even just a brief blog about what's going on, or a brief story about a success happening with your particular nonprofit. That's what they're motivated by. As we close, let me share some exciting news about grant opportunities for nonprofits. There's a grant opportunity through Google. It's in partnership with Google, and that's who we've partnered with. They have an online advertising grant worth up to $120,000 a year for qualified nonprofits, 501c3s specifically. That's what they have. It's an amazing program, and we've partnered with them, and we're helping people and nonprofits connect with them to utilize this grant, to be able to utilize it for online advertising, to get the visibility they need. Because as we've said kind of before, visibility equals visitors. The more visitors we have, the bigger our pie can be, whether it's volunteers, finances, our programs, whatever the case may be. That's the key, is to increase our visibility so more people know about us. And really, what it boils down to, again, is the more the people hear our story, that leads to an increase in those top 5 successful activities we talked about before. Donations, awareness, event attendees, volunteers, and newsletters. That's what builds our base. That's what's building our pie. So the more visibility we get, the bigger the pie. More people come in. More people find out about us. That's the key. As a quick review, advertising for nonprofits is no longer a luxury. It's absolutely a necessity. Days have gone by when we thought about having to advertise and get our message out. It was all just simply really word of mouth, physical word of mouth. It doesn't work that way anymore. We've got to be able to be out there and let people know we exist. All the methods that we talked about today in advertising, the mail, the email, the phone, all of that, those are all valuable. So we're not saying no to any of those. But all of those function around where the trend is going now, which is being online and having that online visibility and reach. Because as you reach out online, You increase the size of your pie. People find out about you, and then they become part of your group because they're connecting with you. They're engaging with you. Now they feel part of the organization. So now you do get from them, after a period of time and building that relationship, you get the mailing address to be able to send them a mailing letter, maybe asking for volunteers or donations, or being a phone number to pick up the phone to call them. But that's how they come. It funnels through that direction, and they all benefit by being online. The results and the comments of all the survey and the national trends, it definitely points out that web-based online advertising is the direction and the key to growing a larger pie. And again, online advertising grants through Google, that $120,000 is available for most nonprofits, most 501c3s. So now what? We've shared a little bit about the survey results and showed the importance of making sure we are out there, getting our message out there for awareness, donations, all those top things, and the way that we do them. So now what? Well, I can ask you the question, would you like to expand your pie and reach more supporters next year? And you can do that through connecting with the up to $120,000 grant from Google. And it's a great program. So the first question usually most people find out is I'm eligible? Am I eligible? Well, the way to find out is right here. We put the link here. You simply have to write the link down or possibly copy it into a URL browser. It's updenity.com/eligible, and you can find out if your organization is eligible. Okay. The other thing is, I know many of you have questions after a webinar, and what I want to do is make sure I'm here to answer any of those questions. I would love to chat with you, find out how we can help you, and see if things are a fit for you, see if what your needs are, and how we can help you and serve you. So my phone number's there, my email is there. You can write those down. I want to thank you so much for coming today and joining us on our webinar. I appreciate your time so much. I know how busy you are. I know the good work that you're doing. And from the responses on the survey, you are doing some fantastic work. And I appreciate that, and I'm inspired by you. So again, I just want to remind you, you can check your eligibility there at the link on the left-hand side of the screen. So write that down. Or you can contact me. Would love to chat with you and find out how we might be able to serve you, lead you, and guide you, and go from there. And so again, thank you for your time. Have a fantastic day and a fantastic week.